Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity Q&A. Today's question, true or false? A foolproof way of securing Microsoft Word is to disable macros and use protected view. Well, let me point out three misconceptions that abound in industry today. One is that disabling macros, which was known to be problematic in years past, which is now the default, by the way, in Microsoft Word, keeps you perfectly safe. Another one is that there is this new feature called protected view that prevents Word from running arbitrary things. And so if you use protected view, why then you can be immune from attack. And then the most pernicious one, Office files are really documents, sort of like PDF. They're not really software. There is no risk at all that an attacker can run arbitrary code if they just merely sent you a document. All these three are really misconceptions. And so let's explore. This was pointed out quite clearly by an attack called Folina. This is back in 2022, CVE 2022-30190. At the end of May, Kevin Beaumont identified an exploit of a rarely used feature in Microsoft Word called the Microsoft Diagnostic Tool, or MSDT. Turns out that if you had an unpatched version of Word, you could send a Word document, but it would really trigger MSDT, which could then download and execute malicious code. Microsoft acted promptly and released a patch about 2 weeks later. And if you're using Office 365 exclusively, not to worry, you were patched. But then if you're using local copies, patching was really up to you. And in any case, there was about a 3-week window between the description of the attack and its patch. And of course, much longer if you were using local copies of Word. So how does this work? Well, the target receives a Word document that contains, usually by email, by the way, and it contains a reference to a remote template, which happens to be hosted on a server run by the attacker. You have an unpatched version of Word. Why then it faithfully downloads and executes the template within which it encounters a reference to msdt.exe. Guess what? Instead of https : if you used msdt : that's what Word will actually do in that version. So Word then executes msdt.exe, but then the parameters it's using are from the template that was hosted on the attacker's server. Ultimately, Word will execute some sort of an arbitrary command using the IT browse for file parameter. Net result, remote code execution. You've been had. So how do you defend against this in the 0 day? Well, as I said, the attacker is using a well-known program, in this case, Microsoft Word, the parent process, to launch a rarely used program, in this case, msdt.exe, also the child process. So guess what? Windows generates the operating system event 4688, which identifies both the parent and the child processes. And in this instance, you'd see the parent process being winword.exe and the child process being msdt.exe. Now, if only you actually managed to capture event ID 4688 in your SIM, and you had the machine learning chops to identify that this combination of parent and child processes were either first time seen or rarely seen, then you would be able to identify this. But good news, the Netsurian Managed XDR application control feature does precisely this. Any monitored endpoint, we gather up 4688 events. We've got machine learning rules back at the console to identify first time or rarely seen combinations of parent-child processes. By the way, for many others, but this is one such rule. If this is seen, this generates an alert to the 24/7 SOC, which is operated by Netsurian. You don't have to be awake at 2 a.m. wondering whether this occurred in your enterprise, because Netsurian SOC is on the job. Day is saved. By the way, did you notice that having the latest antivirus or even EDR would not have necessarily saved you at the time? Now, not an issue because it's been some time and presumably you're well patched, including your local copies. What's the lesson here? Well, the lesson is perfect protection is not practical. Over dependence on your EDR, on your antivirus is not a sensible thing to do. Detection and response is necessary. Thank you for your attention. Hope this was useful.